will tell you that, just a reminder that the Welkers tape the sermons every Sunday and they put them on YouTube. And last week I hooked it to Facebook, and we went from an average of 2 viewers per week to 7. So that's a pretty, hey, that's more than a 50 or 100% jump. But I do think there are some people out there who maybe can't attend services for whatever reason and they want to just listen to it or whatever. But I'll try to hook that through again today. I'll take small wins, okay? So, scriptures today, there are 3. They're a little bit longer, but we're in this whole lecture series, basically, from Aidan Wilson Tozer, who was a great theologian, and trying to break things down. And if anybody remembers what it was about, the sermon was about last week, you get extra points. But I'm don't have any points to give, so I'm just going to remember it's about the senses, having your 5 senses. And when your senses meet your emotional senses, that's when you start building relationships with God. It's because so many people doubt because they can't see, taste, touch, hear, or smell God. But you know when He's around. So it's your spiritual sense, and whenever those meet, often is the important part. So the scriptures today, Psalms 139, 7 through 10. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. And that's a beautiful psalm. If you've never read that portion, 139 is a beautiful psalm. 2 Chronicles 6:18. But will God really dwell on earth with humans? The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built. In Acts 17:26 through 28. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. And God did this so that he would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as some of our own poets have said, we are his offspring. Now, in Christian doctrine, there's some essential teachings, and sometimes they're hidden or embedded or deeply, so deeply hidden that we forget about them. Okay? Little things that we may have learned along the lines growing up or whatever, but they're so deeply hidden we can't even remember them. I'm going to ask you all just to look around at the windows for a minute, and the colors in the windows. And the illustration of this is in all those different colors, there are, and Stacy, you may have to help me, 5 primary colors? Red, blue, green, yellow, 4? 3. Red, blue, yellow. Oh yeah, there's green, red, blue, yellow. Okay, those are your 3 primary colors. And all other colors, sorry, I went blank too. Yeah. I went blank with 3 primary colors, and all the other colors come from mixing those colors. So the idea that we've embedded something so deeply we forget about it is kind of like when you look at these colors, you forget that there's really only 3 essential colors, and everything else comes out of that. If you're a math person, and the other Stephanie will get picked on a little bit now, she taught higher level math, okay? You can't teach some of that higher level math unless you know what 0 means, addition, subtraction. You can't do physics like Lydia Caitlin's in science physics, which she was saying earlier is a combination of math and science. Or you can't do calculus unless you know how to add or subtract. Now there's a difference in doing them and wanting to do them. I get that, okay? But you can't do it unless you, but when you're doing calculus, you don't sit down and say, oh yeah, I gotta remember what 2 plus 2 is. It's automatic for you. So some of these Christian kinds of things are very high level, but they're actually been so embedded on you that you don't even realize you know it. And one of those truths is divine immanence. This is what we're going to talk about today, divine immanence. And that all goes along with the universal presence of God. Okay? Divine immanence means that God in his creation, which is the universe, is everywhere invisibly present. So if you believe in divine immanence, you mean that God is everywhere invisibly present. We know this, but for some reason we choose not to really acknowledge it. What this really means is that God is here. It always makes me think of Christmas. We talk about God coming to us at Christmas, but God is here. Wherever we are, God is here. There's no place you can go that he is not. If we look out at the stars at night, we may understand that those stars, even though they look close, and they may look very close to each other, sometimes are thousands or hundreds of thousands of miles apart. We understand that. Okay? If we were one of those stars looking at ourselves, if we were out there looking back at ourselves, we may seem very, very far away too. But the concept of divine eminence teaches us that none of the stars are really any further away from God than we are from God. Now that's kind of deep, so I'm going to kind of try to explain that. But if God is present in the whole universe, no matter how far away those stars are, they're no farther from God than we are. He is everywhere. It's a hard concept to wrap our heads around because we just can't get that. But God is everywhere, and that's called divine eminence. God is equally present in every part of the universe at all times. But we need to understand that God's presence and the manifestation of his presence are two different things. God's presence, him being everywhere all the time, and his manifestation of his presence in your life are two completely different things. God is always present, but God only manifests himself when we are aware of his presence. Okay? You ever went in, sit down someplace, like you're in your living room and you don't realize anybody's home, and you sit down and somebody goes, "Hey, Mom," and you're like, you didn't realize they were there, okay? We were watching a TV show last night, and this guy got in his car, and this girl says, "Hey," to this guy, "You scared me. I didn't know you were sitting there." Okay? It's the same kind of concept. God is always there, but the person is sitting there, but it really doesn't manifest with us. It doesn't catch us until we realize that they're sitting there. Okay? Think about those senses we talked about last week. How does God manifest himself to us when we start to be able to feel those spiritual senses? And we start to be able to apply that hearing and that feeling. And when George sang a song this morning that touched your heart some way, when the organ plays, and an organ's an interesting instrument. It's different than the piano. An organ you feel, a proper organ you feel more than you hear. Anybody notice that? You ever think of that? That's why you can hear some things buzzing that are vibrating, because an organ will cause those hertz, is what it's called, I think. But you'll feel it. Okay, so it's manifested there somehow. And we must learn to surrender to the Spirit of God in order to sense his presence around us. So we said God is always around us, but how do we let God manifest to us? If we cooperate with God and open ourselves to him, he will manifest. In other words, if we open ourselves up, we will start seeing, hearing, smelling. We will see God. I do not know if God has ever manifested himself to you. Not in the biblical old ways that we think. Okay? But when he does manifest himself, your senses will understand it. You will see, taste, touch, smell, and hear his presence. But sometimes his presence comes through the actions of other people. It's not about God yelling from a cloud, "Hey, you, shape up." Okay? It may be somebody else mentioning something. It may be when Lydia was little and crawled on her lap and said, "I love my fat daddy." Manifested the point that maybe I needed to lose a little weight. Okay? I'm still her fat daddy. But, that's how God doesn't always manifest himself in those ways. But maybe that was God saying to me, through someone else, "You need to lose a little weight, dude." Right? Our pursuit of God is successful because he is always seeking to manifest himself to us. And I'm going to say that again. We are successful in our pursuit of God because God always wants to manifest himself to us, but we're in control of that manifestation. Okay? We are in control of that. In other words, God isn't a matter of miles away. God's a matter of experience. When we speak of being near or farther from God, we are not thinking about space. Right? We're thinking of relationship. And we just sang a song, draw me nearer, 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 precious Lord. Right? You're not talking about pull me closer, closer, closer. You're talking about the relationship. Draw me closer in, closer in, closer in. Okay? When you say, oh, she's a close friend of mine, it doesn't mean she lives right here. Okay? What we say about this, that's my next door neighbor. That's how we differ. A close friend of mine means, though, that we have a good relationship. We're tight. Okay? Why do some people find God in a way or a place that others do not? If God's presence is always there, why do some people find him and some people don't? Because we have to remember to, if we go back a couple weeks, remove that veil of self. Remember we said self gets in the way all too often of our relationship with God. Our self. Because we don't open up. His presence is there, but we got to take that veil off. The difference in finding God isn't a God problem, it's an us problem. And that idea, A.W. Tozer cautions us, though. All too often, we have the idea that God will manifest himself in a grand and glorious way. In other words, we think it's we're back in the deep in our minds, and most of us think this. You deny it, but most of you think, somewhere back deep in your mind, you think at some point God is going to say, Rodney, I need you to do this for me. If you look back through the Bible, that only happened a few times. God manifested somehow, some different way. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Some people do get that. But most of the time, it doesn't. And most of the time, it happens in what Tozer says is these little small, incremental little ways of manifesting himself. And little things you see, and little things that are said to you, and little things that are handed to you, the pat on the back, the phone calls, those little things are God speaking. We must cultivate our own receptivity to God. So we've got to cultivate, how are we going to let God in? Right? And I want you to listen to this. A generation of Christians reared among push buttons and automatic machines is impatient of slower and less direct methods of reaching their goals. I'm going to read that again. A generation of Christians reared among push buttons and automatic machines is impatient of slower and less direct methods of reaching their goals. Sound like modern day society? Tozer wrote that in either the late 40s or the early 50s. It hasn't changed. All the technology, so it hasn't changed. Even in the 40s and 50s, they were impatient. They wanted to be able to push a button, and God is here. Can't remember the Staples commercial. Was it the easy button or the do-over button? It's what we want with God. We want to push the button when we want God here, and then we want to push the button when we want to turn God off. But Tozer says it doesn't work that way. God is always with us. God is always with us, and it's not about space. It's about relationships. And you know what? Relationships take time. And we must be patient. We will know God, and he will manifest himself to us when we remove that veil and allow our senses to see God. But sometimes it takes time to get there. Sometimes it takes us working at it a little bit. First and foremost, we must learn to have faith and love and to practice that. So today, God is always with us, but God is only truly with us when we open our eyes and our ears and our nose and our mouth and let him manifest his presence with us. Let's open our hymnals to 553.